This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bornini, and these are your headlines. The Singapore-Cambodian money laundering case goes stratospheric. E. coli is causing scientists to look on in horror. And Mr. Kong and Mr. Hong have a ding-dong. But firstly, to our main headline. And this week we are returning to a story that we covered a couple of weeks ago, as it has escalated to such a level it simply defies all credulity, and has now reached such a height it has left many in law enforcement absolutely staggered as to how much money is actually involved. I am referring, of course, to the vast money laundering operation that has deep roots both in Singapore and Cambodia. The Chinese nationals arrested at the very heart of this amazing crime held Cambodian passports, and it is now being asked, were any Cambodian banks or financial institutions also involved? The Singaporean police have now issued a new total as to the amount of money being laundered by the gang, and that total is truly astonishing. So far, and I would like you to note that this is just the tally at this very moment, and it could go higher, but at current the Singaporean police have seized assets and cash of over $1.75 billion in one of the biggest money laundering cases ever uncovered. Now, just to give you an idea as to how big that is, that figure of 1.75 billion is exactly the same amount of profit that the entire Ford Motor Company made last year, and they employ 175,000 people. So these men were really laundering cash on a scale that can only be called industrial. And if you want to hazard a guess as to where $1.75 billion in illegal earnings come from, then we need to learn three words. The first is drugs, and the second is online scams. The Singaporean police said this week that they had seized additional assets. For the trove of seized assets now includes bank accounts containing an estimated value of over $830 million. Even more alarmingly, $56 million in cash was confiscated. And to give you an idea what 56 million is like, that is over half a ton of banknotes at the bare minimum. But if all that is not enough wealth to make Midas envious, there was also a big pile of gold bars and hundreds of luxury watches and jewellery. But I suppose you have to keep all of this loot somewhere, and the Singaporean police found that as well, for what they discovered was 118 properties as well as 62 vehicles, all of which have now been impounded. The scale of this whole thing is absolutely vast. Authorities had previously seized assets worth nearly $750 million in raids against suspected international money laundering rings. During this police operation, 10 foreign nationals, including people from China and Cambodia, were arrested. So let's review this. What do we have on the table? We have $1.75 billion worth of cash and goods, which, as I say, is the same profits as Ford, a top automaker on the Fortune 500 list. But all this money and all this greed leaves a single question. How long have they been getting away with it? And how many billions of dollars have been laundered before those Singaporean police kicked in their doors? There has been a very dramatic rise in dengue fever cases of late. But this is not the only spectre of death that haunts, as a new study has pointed out that due to a lack of clean water, sanitation and hygiene controls within Cambodia, there has been a very worrying emergence of drug-resistant strains of E. coli. The report's findings spell out a very dire warning, for what has been discovered is transmission between animals and humans is now more frequent than ever before, and with potentially little or no defense against a new virulent strain of E. coli, the threat is very real indeed.
A new and very worrying study suggests that E. coli is passing easily between humans and animals within Cambodia due to sanitation and hygiene controls being lax throughout the country, and in unregulated antibiotic use, which will inevitably lead to the emergence of a new drug-resistant E. coli variant. Scientists of the Antibiotic Research Action Center at George Washington University conducted their research in Phnom Penh, noting that they found humans and animals often living in very close proximity. Added with that, there's a lack of clean water, and this quite simply is a hotbed for the spread of E. coli. The team worked in Phnom Penh and identified multiple genetic elements that show the disease's resistance to even the most powerful antibiotics, and that has them extremely worried. And it's worthy of noting exactly what they say here. For what they said is, the results from our study were jaw-dropping. They suggest that E. coli strains from people and animals are at rates we don't see in other countries. And what is more worrying, they are now resistant to the most powerful antibiotics. So, simply put, they say that the various elements in play here are brewing the next deadly pandemic. And to clarify how deadly this could be, we now turn to the numbers, for the scale here really ratchets up, and we will see how deadly this could be. Because you see, at current, antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections cause more than 1.3 million deaths yearly in high-income countries like the United States. And that is high-income countries. So imagine how vulnerable a country is without advanced healthcare system. And add into the mix of misery the fact that the chronic overuse of prescribed antibiotics within Cambodia has only severely diluted the ability to fight back, or worse still, has rendered all antibiotics useless. When you consider all this, you now understand why those scientists said their results were jaw-dropping. And now to our crime desk.
Now, our first case is of a man taking the law into his own hands, and I mean quite literally. For a man has been arrested for issuing a fake royal decree. Really? Now that is bold. Police have arrested a man who issued a counterfeit royal decree appointing himself as... Now, it's here I need to pause to ready myself as man, oh man, did he award himself a title. Here we go. He anointed himself as the Deputy Director General of the General Department of Human Resources of the Ministry of Interior and Assistant to the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Cambodia. Wow. Police made the arrest in Phnom Penh when the National Police conducted a search and arrested one Mr. Bon Rith. and he confessed that he had falsified royal decrees. The forgery was made using a personal computer. Now it bends credulity that he felt he could get away with this. But believe me when I tell you this much. There is more gullible people on this earth than there are fraudsters. Okay, here is a good one for you. Mr. Kong would really like to meet Mr. Hong. And I'm telling you, dear viewer, that Mr. Kong really wants to meet Mr. Hong as a matter of some great urgency. In fact, he has 4,000 reasons as to why he wants to meet him. And it's all due to a simple error, one that you could have made yourself. The tale of woe goes like this. Mr. Kong hailed Mr. Hong's tuk-tuk, and together they took a short ride. All good so far. The fare itself was just 4,000 real, and Mr. Kong paid with his phone app, and he left happy. But there was only one small problem. Dear old Kong had not paid in real, but in dollars. And instead of paying $1, he had paid $4,000, an overshoot of $3,999. So I think you can now see why Kong wants to find his dear old Hong. And to help, here is a picture of Hong on the screen. So keep a sharp eye out for him, and if by chance you see him, you stop him and you tell him this. Hong, it's all gone terribly wrong. Your bong, Kong, paid you too strong, and now he longs for his dong. I am, of course, assuming that Kong will accept repayment in Vietnamese currency. A vow has been made, a promise, and I think it is one that we can all get behind. And that vow says that the rivers of Phnom Penh will be garbage-free by 2028. That is only a few short years away. It is truly an awful blight to see rivers choked with those bloody awful polystyrene food containers that are the scourge of every single waterway and ditch within the kingdom. They are a nuisance beyond calculation, as no matter what scenic view one stops to admire, there they are, plastic food bags and polystyrene containers just thrown into the waterways. And now, with the capital alone producing 3,500 tons of rubbish every single day, this polystyrene blizzard that blights the countryside and waterways could only get bigger if it's not dealt with.
The River Ocean Cleanup Group, known as the ROC, has reported that the organisation has collected, wait for it, 800 tons of garbage from Tonle Sap, Tonle Basak and the Mekong River in just 2 years. Yes, 800 tons. And what you need to remember here is most of that is plastic and polystyrene, and that doesn't weigh anything. So you are looking at a huge amount of waste. Now, the executive director of the ROC said their goal was to remove all the rubbish from the rivers in Phnom Penh by the year 2028. And he estimates that the waterways of Phnom Penh have a further 5,000 tons of garbage within them. He said, "We are faced with many challenges, but we will expand our actions to clean up the rubbish from the rivers and aim to hit our 2028 objective." He compared the river to a water container from which anybody can drink, but its purity is judged by the amount of consideration that people give it. A village chief chimed in, a Mr. Sambath, and what he said was, people continue to throw their waste into the river, because some of them are too ignorant or too lazy to properly dispose of their waste. Often they say it's too far from their homes, so people opt to toss rubbish into the river just to avoid the smell or having to walk to dispose of their rubbish. And there it is. The key to this whole issue is education. It's not just the people whose homes are near the rivers. An example is street vendors that allow this continual blizzard of polystyrene to be thrown on the floor by their customers. And that polystyrene is blown in the wind and directly into the waterways. Quite simply, a sense of pride must be installed to help Cambodia to stay clean.
It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
Oh, hello, and welcome for joining me in Weather Corner. Oh dear, I'm going to start banging my head. It's all going wrong again, isn't it? The jolly old thunder and lightning's back, and I wasn't anticipating that. But here's the good news, is it's in bursts. We're getting towards the end of the rainy season, I assure you, but we're still getting these final bursts of, I don't know, how would you say, tempestuous weather. But it's not like it was, that big drawn out rain that just won't quit. So what we're looking at, we've got humidities in the 50s and 60s, very manageable indeed. And as I say, you're going to get a burst of rain. You just need to take cover, wonder about life a bit, and before you know it, you'll be back on your way again. And it won't be long before we can all complain about the sun.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.